This last year has been one of the most challenging years in terms of getting back to loving myself. And so 1 year ago, I hated myself. I hated that I had ever put these things in, that I had ever been so persuaded by outside influence. And 1 year later, I know that although unfavorable, although I still have moments where I cry and that I ask why, and I want to be healed faster and I want to look different, although those moments still come in, I live in a place of such deep empowerment because I'm more than my body. For so long, I've abused my body. I've treated it like something that had let me down rather than realizing it has always carried me, it has always forgiven me, it has always kept me safe. And so my love for my body, and I mean that beyond the scope of my skin or deformed breasts, like my body, the soul that's contained within this meat suit, if you will, it is so much admiration for what she has done for me.
This episode of the Kintsugi Podcast is brought to you by Pause, Breathe, Reflect, which can help you bring mindfulness to your everyday moments. Hey there, my fellow like-hearted humans. It's Michael, and this is the Kintsugi Podcast. Thanks for carving out some time to drop in and listen to this week's story of connection. It's inspiring. It's with someone who is a seeker. She's curious. She's driven. She likes the cold plunge. She's a mom, a partner, and like you, a like-hearted human putting something good into the world. And in the category of you do you, she's doing you pretty dang good. She's confident in stepping into who she is. And yes, like all of us, she's perfectly imperfect. She gets in her head just like, again, any of us. And she's making a difference. And went through a very significant transformation, especially in our culture that spends so much time obsessing over looks, and in particular, how women should look. So if you're ready, let's take a healthy breath in and a slow releasing breath out. And connect with this week's story of connection from Lindsaya VanDusen. Hey, Lindsaya, good to see you.
So good to see you, Michael.
So we're going to go for a little walk and talk as we talk about wellness and a whole bunch. But I do want to start here. What's the best thing that's happened already for you before going on this little walk that we're going to go on?
Today or this year? How are you feeling?
Yeah, today. It can be today. It can be this year. It could be last night because we are sitting down the day after the Detroit Lions won their first playoff game in a few years. So you get to drive here. So you get to decide what the time frame is.
I love it. Well, I was able to attend. My husband's a season ticket holder. So, winning that playoff game for the Lions, and I'm Michigan native, homegrown here. So they've been my football team, whether I have been proud of it or maybe not so much over these last 20 plus years. So being at that game last night, I am far from the biggest football fan. And what I will say, the greatest thing that happened was that collective energy, the eruption of humanity in that stadium, all celebrating the same thing. That to me is a testimony to what it is to be human and to be in community. So it was profound. And my husband has been a season ticket holder for over 2 decades. And so to his buddy and his buddy's dad too. So to be able to be there and witness what they have been so committed to, whether it was the most losingest team or however they deemed that years ago to now playing our former quarterback and taking the W. So super excited. Definitely a very powerful thing that has happened. A big win in the world of the VanDusens.
That's really cool. What you mentioned, though, being in the arena, that collective effervescence, that is awe. And that was gone for several years from our existence, our experience dealing with the pandemic, that ability to be in community. And we're going to talk about your community because you have a wonderful community, but I could feel it through the television set here outside of New York, get that bubbliness. It's the same feeling you get when you go to a concert. I think that's what makes Taylor Swift, as an example, or another star, so powerful. And there's such connectivity between a star like her and her fans, because there is that sense of awe when she performs. And yeah, last night, Detroit had a sense of awe. And really over the last week, whoever fills up your mug, Mother Earth, the universe, or God, is pouring one mighty fine latte for the state of Michigan. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, sure are.
It's not
Absolutely.
bad. It's not bad. My wife is from, her dad's side of the family is from Michigan. So my wife came down this morning as I was preparing my latte, and she was like, someone upstairs is looking down on my dad, or my dad's looking down, or however she phrased it. And there's just something good. Like, there's something out there that wants to make my dad feel happy, because he was a crazy football fan. So it's pretty cool to see.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So where's your wife from? I'm curious.
So my wife is from Portland, Oregon. So my father-in-law grew up in Michigan, went to the University of Michigan med school. He was an ophthalmologist. He's been passed for several years due to early onset Alzheimer's disease. He wanted to get the heck out of Michigan. So he moved to Portland to get into the country when Portland wasn't that place where 20-year-olds go to retire, as the saying goes. So they bought a whole big farm outside of Portland on the west side, closer to the coast. So she grew up in Portland, but there's strong Midwestern ties because her mom's from Ohio, dad from Michigan, move out to the West. So there's a lot of Michigan pride and stuff like that. So it's a great city. And I think it is one of those cities in America that's a bellwether. Like how it goes, I think our country goes. And my hope is that it's still in this process of re-imaging itself into something beyond just automobiles. And there's great hope. And so if there's hope for Detroit, I think we can have greater hope for our country.
Yeah, well, as someone who lives 15 minutes from the city heart, so the heart of the city is like a stone's throw from my doorstep, I will say that the reimagining has been taking place for a decade. It is remarkable to see what it is today versus what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And the industry influx and diversity is definitely something that has been remarkable. So if we're looking at this as the thermostat for the rest of the United States, I'd say we have great opportunity to hope. And last night being another testament to that. So
yeah, it's Kintsugi in action. It breaks apart and comes back together beautifully. So I think that's promising. So you mentioned your husband. My wife and I love good couple origin stories. So how'd you meet, basically, is the question.
Yeah, at a bar.
At a bar. That is, I would have to say, we ask this question a lot. That is a very common answer. Yeah. At a bar. Yeah.
Yep, at a bar. 17 years ago, we met at a bar, a very empty bar, actually. And I am someone who loves to find my way onto the dance floor. I've always been one who believes in moving my body and letting the rhythm move me. It has been a way in which I've been able to, just move energy. And so it was very empty. And his brother and him were standing at a bar with their back to me. And I actually walked up to him because he had a Michigan State hat. And I am a fan of Michigan State. So I walked up to him and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Do you dance?" And he said, "Not really." And I said, "Well, you do tonight with me." And that's the beginning of everything.
That is so cool. I love that. So is there a song? I know there are plenty, but if you had to pick a couple, you're out, the song comes on, and you're like, all right, dance floor, here we come. Is there something that comes to mind?
Oh my goodness. Right now, like I literally would have to look at my playlist. I'm pulling it up because I'm cheating, if that's called cheating.
That's okay. You can, this is a cheating, walking, talking thing.
I mean,
this is fine.
Yeah, right now, like my things right now are Take My Breath by The Weeknd. That's one that like definitely gets me moving.
That's a great song. That's an awesome song. That will get me going.
Yeah, it's zero. There isn't a song as much as it's about a beat. So I can be in another country and not understand a single thing that's being said. And if the BPM, if the beat is there, then I'm moving. And that's the way that it is.
I love that. I'm very much the same. I'm a big dance in my car. So if someone's driving down the New Jersey Turnpike, let's say, and they see someone driving that looks like he's having a seizure, they may not be. It's just me dancing. I've danced so enthusiastically that other cars have passed me, like cars with teenagers, and they'll start trying to dance like I am in a very mocking way. And I'm like, all right, they noticed me. That's cool. All right. So like it made them smile and laugh. They were laughing probably at me, but I believe they were laughing with me and they were also dancing because they started to dance after they saw me dance. So I'm that type of driver.
Me too. You know, for long trips, especially, I am a huge believer that like that's how you ensure that you keep the blood flowing. Like you stay attentive, right? Like I'm not going to dance so crazy that I'm swerving.
Yeah, I'm not swerving. I'm straight line, but I am moving the body. Some of the worst moments of my family vacations growing up, because I have a few years on you. So our first couple of cars only had AM radio, which meant if the radio was on, which it wasn't on the entire trip, which is wrong in my opinion. I'm just putting it out there. Although I do like my silence, but on a road trip, I'm like, radio must be on. And so with AM radio, if you went under a bridge, it would cut out.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a second of the music cutting out. And I'm like, oh, that's the worst second. And some of our trips, we'd go under a lot of bridges. So yeah, I got to have the music on when I'm driving.
Yeah, I can't imagine. So it's funny. I was a hairstylist for 15 years behind the chair. I've been licensed for 23. And the entire time you're in the salon, the music is on. And so that's probably the only time in my life where after like a 10-hour day or a 12-hour day, I would get in the car and I was like, no music. Like nothing, just pure quiet and driving and thinking. It's probably the only time you'll ever find me in a car without music on.
All right. I can appreciate that. There was a talk I once gave up in Boston, and I'll be vulnerable. It was a disaster. It was not a good talk for a variety of different reasons, which we don't have to get into today. But the whole drive home from Boston, no sound. I just sat in my misery because I needed to process what happened. By the time I got home back to New York City, New Jersey, I was okay. But I needed those 4 hours just to like sit in it, and just be okay being in the goo, the glop.
Yeah.
All right. So how would you describe yourself? We're going to take what you do professionally and we're going to put that on the back burner. So all the stuff that you do, we're going to get into that. But if you took that, placed it on the back burner, how would you describe yourself?
Oh, I think I'm high energy. I think that, I know, I don't think these things. I know that I'm high energy. I know that I'm very loving, very trustworthy. I'm compassionate and have a high level of empathy. I'm a leader by nature. It's something that has always lived within me. I am a nurturing human being. I have a deep desire to care for others. And I am someone who loves community. I love humanity. I love people. I know that I'm an only child. And so that has always called in this like deep desire to find, other earthlings that are going to call themselves my siblings by choice, of course. And Yeah, I'm driven. I'm determined. I've got a work ethic that I'm super proud of. And I am a dreamer. I am a powerful manifester. Like I am a master manifester. And so if I see it, I will speak it until it comes to fruition. And I am someone who is deeply connected to higher source, whatever that may be for you. I call it God. And so I am absolutely cut in the image of God, and I'm here to do something really special, as I believe we all are.
Yes, you are. The one thing I didn't hear though was curiosity. You're
Oh,
curious.
I'm like the most curious human ever.
I think that's where I want to begin. Hey, all those other like labels and qualities that you just dropped, I'm buying all that because I know who you are and I just believe you. I actually know, scratch that belief. You bring so much to this world, and my language, like the ripple that you're putting into the world is so meaningful and so needed. And I know you're touching lives. You don't even know where those lives are, those humans, halfway around the world. So in what you do and all that you bring. So this journey with wellness, from what I understand, started when you became a mom for the first time. I know when I became a dad for the first time, when I held our oldest Al, I was like, oh my God. One, I was just in awe of my wife. Just the whole process of childbirth is just mind blowing. She's a childbirth doula, so she does that all the time now, which is just so fascinating. But when I held Al for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, it just got real. Like, what do we do? And from what I understand, that was a big wake up call for you because the Lindsaya we know as this wellness warrior, it wasn't always that way. So can you bring us into maybe that moment and this journey with wellness, this person that's building community and shining a light and connecting and telling people, hey, you're going to be my friend. And they're like, yeah, I want to be your friend, like all that. So we'll start there as we continue our walk and talk.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Oh, what a blessed moment to become someone's parent. Like what an incredible blessing. It changes everybody, right? Like it changes absolutely everybody that chooses that for their life or is blessed enough to have it as their life. So my dog is also agreeing. My daughter.
The dog totally agrees.
she agreed.
The dog loves you too. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, she is my other baby. In fact, the one we're talking about is going to come let the other one in here in a moment. So to predate the period in which I was expecting, I was raised by an incredible single mom. She did her absolute best in everything. I mean, I get my work ethic and my determination and my willpower and all of those things from my mom. And there was, I mean, we can all recall a time before our, Google was on a held hand device, let alone even accessible in the home. And so the information era has changed so much. And my mom was doing the best and was being guided by health practitioners and doctors and specialists and all the things. I, however, was a child who dealt with obesity, being overweight, asthma, acne, migraines, diagnosed with, depression and body dysmorphia in my early teens, a lot of things. And so it's safe to say, and it's the truth, that I really hated me. I hated a lot about everything from my body to things about my identity. I always had areas of confidence. I've always been someone who could grab a mic and speak in front of people and I have a bold personality in that way of leadership. And yet I really hated my picture of health. I didn't understand why I always didn't feel well. And when I found out I was going to be a mom, it was really my aha moment came from that 20-week appointment, because back then too, nearly 20 years ago, you had to wait until 20 weeks to find out the gender of your baby. And I was stepping into motherhood as a single mom too. Her father had moved out of our house when I was 5 months pregnant. And so I knew I was entering into motherhood in a way that was unfavorable to me. I really had, yearned to break that generational curse, as it felt to me. And when I was coming home from the gender revealing appointment, I know exactly where I was on the highway. I know the whole moment is so slow motion for me as I was staring out to the right-hand side into the trees and really thinking like what my life was going to become and how I was going to do this. And I had this deep-seated curiosity. I love that through curiosity, because I was so curious how I was going to be able to teach my little girl how to live differently, how to have a different life when I didn't know how to create that for me. And so that was the moment where I knew I had to learn new things. I had no idea, of course, what those new things would be. I knew it was like the deepest knowing that I did not contain the information innately and that it was going to take intentional seeking and learning to do it differently. And so that was the moment that I committed to going out and remaining open and curious. Most importantly, the open part, because I'd been indoctrinated by the medical system. My mom, she still has rheumatoid arthritis, and we were at the hospital at least once a week for her treatments, sometimes even more than that. So I was very indoctrinated to the medical way of things. And I knew it was going to take learning something beyond the scope of those practices to be able to create what I deemed a healthy, and I don't mean baby as in her birthing, I mean a healthy child, a healthy raising, someone that could hopefully walk through life differently. And so that's where it all began for me, Michael, was that drive home, figuring out and learning that I was going to be, of course, I already knew I was going to be a mom, but learning that I was in this space where I had the opportunity to do it differently.
Yeah, a healthy being. That's what I hear. You want to create this wonderful, loving being that can go down a different path. As parents, we'd probably say a better path than what we traveled, because we know a little bit more. So hopefully we can do a little bit better. The other thing I hear is such a powerful why or purpose to get past the resistance or just the feeling of overwhelm. Because what I heard from what you just shared was, hey, I had this upbringing that was based in Western medicine. There's probably a good deal of suffering going on in the house because of medical conditions that your mom was dealing with and you were dealing with. So you have this bold personality. That's my hunch as a single child, that you can get up in front of people and make things happen and you're going to be my friend type of stuff. But inside, there's probably a not so positive self-narrative. Your mom is dealing with her things. So you have this world that you know, and now you're going to be a mom. Your child to be, this being, is what helps you break through the resistance that keeps so many of us back in the status quo and also tries to dampen the feeling of overwhelm. Because what you're talking about that's a huge shift, going from what you have already lived to a completely new way of living for you and your soon-to-be daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. If left to doing it for me, I don't know what I would have done. I think it would have been a tenth of what I leaned into. It really was the knowing that this innocent being deserved the best. And so even when it felt scary, challenging, in opposition to what I knew, any of those things, even when that would come up for me, she was worthy. So I would maybe buying the organic food felt too expensive, especially a single mom going to college, working full time, living on my own, like very real things. Money was far from a feeling of abundance in that time in my life. And so if I was buying organic food for me, it would have been an absolute no. Like I was not spending the money, but she was so worthy. So she became the why that pulled me along through the journey because I wanted to do better for her. And by nature, that meant that better for me. And so, yeah, it was without a doubt, God gave her to me for a reason. And she, I know, saved me,
Yeah, she's the first ripple, right? She comes in, that's the first ripple, then motivates you to discover more so you can ripple out to others. That's the cool thing, right? Our kids, for those lucky enough and fortunate to have kids, if they want to, it's, our kids become our teachers in a lot of ways. And so it's really unbelievable at all phases of their lives, from a newborn baby to my girls are in their 20s. They're still teaching me things and dad's a little slow. So they keep on, they're very patient teachers. So they're still teaching me things.
Yeah.
The thing that I love also about this new journey that you're going on is your approach, because you were starting at Baltic Avenue on the Monopoly board or Mediterranean Avenue or whatever that first
The
property
brown
is.
one.
The brown, yeah, whatever. Because you have to get the money. So that game sets the stage, right? Success in life is gathering the most money. So again, for another podcast, but let's go back to wellness. Is that you started small and you kept on building and building your knowledge base. And I would love for you to talk through that with us, because a lot of times when we have a big this big lightning bolt, we want to make the change right away and do a 180. And some people can be very successful with that. And when they're successful with that, they get up on stage and then they tell everyone, look at how successful I was. You can be just like me. But that's not the typical way to success. It's up and down and sideways and backwards and all that. But there's steady progress consistently over time, and we build into this. And I would love for you to share more about your journey into wellness, and then we'll get into your wellness warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, again, had that aha, and I don't know where people go when they realize they want to be healthier and they want to do better for their baby. I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is, the joke from, and I worked there too. And so the joke is that it's a very granola city, meaning hippies and lots of hippie shops and
yes,
natural things.
Cotton. There's cotton in Ann Arbor. There's things now like candles.
Yeah.
With a scent and a lot of cotton.
Yeah.
And some muesli, for the granola. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my lack of knowledge, I went to a grocery store that's known. This was before the world of Whole Foods had made it nationally, right? So there wasn't a Whole Foods in our state, let alone in my city. So I went to what many people called the natural grocery store. And I went there to get an idea of what this new kind of food I was going to be buying. I knew enough about, I had enough awareness to know that there was better food than my fast food diet. And that, I had started reading because I was pregnant about eating more healthily. So I had started to gain this understanding. I'd also been on a million bajillion diets and through diet centers in my teens to lose weight. So again, it wasn't that I lacked any awareness that there was something better. I simply had no idea what that meant. And so I went to the grocery store to figure out what I actually needed to budget. Here I was going to have this new human. So I went to find out how much. I knew that, after breast milk, the baby would be moving to milk. That was what I was taught anyways. I do it differently these days. And I went to figure out how much this stuff was going to cost me, to buy the organic, clean milk. And after I had my breakdown, because I cried in that grocery store looking at the prices wholeheartedly, kind of hyperventilating, crying. Sweet lady comforted me for a moment in the milk section. And back then there was a bulletin board when you left the grocery store where people could put up all sorts of things. And there was a health talk that, you just rip the number off the bottom of the flyer and you call and register.
A very hippie thing to do, to just rip a number off of a flyer.
Just rip it off. And I had no idea. I knew that there were two doctors. I didn't know one was a chiropractor doctor, and then one was a functional med doctor. And they were doing a free talk for anybody. And the flyer said something about want to be healthier. That's probably the only thing I needed to see. And I went to that talk and I was blown away by everything they were saying. It was a lot of new information. And then they send you home, when you came in, you got just a regular little folder with a whole bunch of handouts, educational forms in there. Of course, this was, you could become a patient too. I was so far from being ready for that. I had zero funds to pay for it. So that wasn't even an option for me. Years later, I circled back to those practices too. And I took this folder home. There were so many things in there. Every piece of paper was another thing to apply to your life. And I put it on the kitchen table. I wanted to, first off, I was pissed off. I wanted to just throw it in the trash. Again, if it was only for me, it would have made its way in the trash. It went to the kitchen table because it was for my baby. And I decided that what I would do is I would reach my hand in and pull out a piece of paper and I would put that one on the fridge and I would work on that until it was easy. And then I would pull another one. So that was my system to how am I going to apply these things? Or if it wasn't applied, because not everything's necessarily applicable. It may be I don't know about this. I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to find someone who's teaching about it. I'm going to go to something. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, that's how I learned about sound therapy, and I learned about clean water and like just all of these BPA and like just all of the things that these incredible practitioners had chosen to build us a to-go folder. And it became my pathway that, I say was divinely led, because I just went in and grabbed one. That way there was no deciding for me, and I couldn't put the hardest towards the back or, do the easy ones first. And that became the process for me, Michael. Sometimes they'd be on the refrigerator for a week, a day. I don't think any made it a day, a week, maybe two. And sometimes it'd be up there for months because it was something that felt daunting, or there was a lot of learning, or I was doing that 2 steps forward, 5 steps back kind of thing. And that was my process to what I call now amplifying the wellness warrior within, and my pathway to learning.
Do you recall the first piece of paper you pulled out?
I do. First piece of paper was about BPA lining in cans. So in your canned goods.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty wild. That's an interesting one to start with, because I was thinking it would be like movement or whole foods or making sure you're hydrated or cutting out alcohol, which probably was not as big back then as it is now.
Correct.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So you start on this piece of paper by piece of paper. Your daughter's born. She's growing up. Your family grows, right? And as you're growing into this new way of living, you're adding more and more things. Just out of curiosity, how does the family feel about all of this? Is it like, Mom, you've sort of crossed the line. It's a little crazy. Like, can we go to McDonald's once? Are we going to get in trouble? Like, share that with me, because I run into this a lot, right? I talk to a lot of folks like, well, so-and-so in the family wants to do this. It could be any family member. So my youngest was the first one to go vegetarian in her house. And then her pressure, got me to go plant-based. And then when I went plant-based, my wife is essentially plant-based. So, but it took years. And there's a little bit of like, well, I don't know, like, look at this research. Well, look at that research. And there's battling research and battling perspectives, and there's struggle. Can you share more about like what was that like to bring us up to where you are today, especially as it relates to the family? Because it's hard to do this alone within a family because you have, everyone to care for.
Yeah. Well, my daughter, again, I was learning these things, applying them slowly. So my daughter had fast food. I did stop feeding her McDonald's, only Wendy's, right? Like that was a big upgrade for us. Again, it was only her and I. She didn't know any differently. It wasn't until school age where I think she really started to have the conscious awareness that I was choosing to do something different than a lot of her peers. I met my husband when my daughter was 2. We got married and moved in together when she was 4. And he was and ate significantly different than me. In fact, when we first started, commingling, where he was engaged with my daughter and all of those things, I made a list and put it as the no list on his fridge, the things he was not allowed to feed my baby if they were in food. Like that was, so I was like, when it's for us, like you can do whatever you want, but when it comes to my kid, these are the things that aren't allowed.
Yeah, if you want to eat that steak that's going to kill you, by the way, go for it. But my baby ain't going to get close to red meat.
Yeah. Well, red meat was way later. I was a meat eater I literally have a still high school friend, and I used to purchase a whole cow and distribute it within a community, grass fed, free range, like you can go sleep with your cows. So they have 3,000 acres in northern Michigan, no antibiotics, none of that stuff. So that was actually part of my journey. So before that, it was like organic meat. I was more with him, like, you're not going to feed the deli select and non-organic milk to my child. Like, those lunch meats, you can keep those to yourself.
Yeah, no, Oscar Mayer has a first name.
Yeah. Yeah, like the 3 variety pack from Costco. So all of those things.
Yeah, like none of that. So you can eat that. You can kill yourself if you want to, like whatever. Yeah. I still love you, dear, but my baby ain't getting any of this.
Yeah, exactly. So the reality is that the Wellness Warrior community, it was created because everybody thought I was crazy. And I think still at this point, In my nuclear family, they're definitely more aligned. My husband, now exclusively plant-based, really is happy to come along with anything that I say nutritionally because he's built that trust for me. My daughter's 19, going to be 20. I mean, she knows. She'll ask me if something's gluten-free, and 4 days later, I'll hear that she went to Chick-fil-A with her friends, even though I've taught her about how Chick-fil-A will never rot. You can, you can keep it on your countertop. So she's 19. My son is 13 years old. He is probably the most resistant at this age because, like I said, he's 13 years old. So like right now, it's a form of child abuse in his mind. Sometimes the way that I have us eating, he also has zero control because he doesn't have the freedom to go out and buy anything. He has people that supply it for him, like his big sister and friends and birthday parties.
An unhealthy food supplier. So it's
like a drug pusher of a whole
like a
different
drug
type.
pusher. Here's the Chick-fil-A. Like it's like just one.
Yeah. And, then if you go a little further out into my family, there's a lot of, resistance, and people have thought I was crazy and I'm high maintenance and all the things that if you move in the way of amplifying your health, you've likely had people around you who I really believe that they're worried about you because they're uninformed. And so they don't want you to get sucked into something that's unsafe or, a gimmick or any of those things. So I really do think it comes from a place of generosity.
Yeah, or cult-like.
A cult, yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you start talking about energy and moonbeams and stuff like that and manifesting, to most folks, they're like, what? It's a foreign language. And yeah, people are worried. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the call for community, I mean, the reason that I said I'm creating a community and that I'm going to call together other people who are excited to talk about the things and do the things that I'm doing. Not that they have to follow what I'm doing, but rather I wanted, that proverbial, I wanted to be able to sit around the bonfire and shamelessly speak and have dialogue around things like where our food is grown and how it's grown and how we're fueling our bodies. So that's where our community began, because still to this day, my whole family doesn't necessarily live, think, or believe the same way. And that's okay. I'm doing what's right for me. But yeah, I would say that there's been resistance. There's been, where I have been ostracized and pushed away. I've been made fun of. I've been put down. I've been all of the things from many different directions. I've been called crazy or militant. People think that choosing to love my body and take care of it means that I can't have any fun. So there have been a lot of things that have been spoken over me or about me. And I would be lying if I said it was never hurtful or it never made me sad. Of course it did. Like, you want to be loved and accepted and appreciated and celebrated. Like, this is what we want in humanity. And at the same time, I'm also one of those people that if you tell me I can't, I will, and I'll do it quickly. So it's also come to serve me because it has allowed to be something that's fueled my commitment to me.
I love that. Tell me no and just watch.
Yeah.
I do appreciate, though, I want to go back to what you said a little bit earlier, that you were upgrading to Wendy's, because that was my childhood. We didn't go to McDonald's. My mom was leveling up. No, we're going to go to the fancy place, Wendy's. We're going to get a baked potato along with that big burger. And a little funny story about my youngest. So she was out with friends. Another mom took her and her 3 amigos out, and they went to Burger King. And the mom asked Grady, like, well, what do you want? And Grady had never been to fast food. So growing up, we don't do fast food. So she had never been to a Burger King before. And she just looked up, like, I think she was 7, looked up at the menu, and she had no clue what to do. And so the mom called my wife and said, I have to apologize. I think I just broke your daughter. I took her to her first fast food restaurant. We went to Burger King and we were like, oh, well, in the scheme of life, it's one meal. We're all still good. But it was sort of a funny thing, because the mom was a little bit like, you guys don't do that. And we're like, no, that's just not how we roll. But to your point, the labels of you're a little weird, you're militant, you're difficult, you're going to make yourself sick. This is cult-like, this isn't normal. Lindsaya, you're not normal. You have to be mindful of your kids because you don't want to raise kids who are not normal, not like us. And what I love about your community, your wellness warriors, is that you gave folks a place in that circle around that fire where you could feel like you belong. Everyone's at a different point in their wellness journey, but everyone's there because they believe there's a different path. And some people will go full on, like full gas on that path, and some will just take a leisurely walk. But you give people a place where they feel safe, where they can connect, they can be curious, they can discover, they can try some things on for size. And if it fits, awesome. But if it doesn't fit, awesome. But that sense of belonging, which we so thirst for in that Kintsugi spirit, that connection piece, because the way we're doing things with Western medicine, which I've benefited from and I believe has a super important role, but big food, right, has fractured us. And so now we're all walking around fractured, going through the drive-through, which has killed more people than drive-by shootings. Just saying. You've created this wonderful community where people can come together, reconnect in that Kintsugi spirit, scars and all from the breaking, and feel like they can still be beautiful. And I just like a shout out to you for creating such a space, because we are so thirsty in this country and all across the planet for a greater sense of belonging.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It came from my own desire to belong. So I say all the time, it was far less selfless than people often give me credit for. I was like, I want to belong. So I'm going to put out like the call, I'm going to SOS, like, who wants to talk about these things too? So
who wants to be my friend? You're going to be my friend. All right. We're going to talk about this stuff, which is just a great theme.
Like hiring friends.
Hiring friends. All friends come. It's a casting call for friendship. Come here. We're going to meet on Zoom or wherever we meet.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a pause. And when we come back, Lindsaya will share about addiction and her incredible transformation. All right. Let's take a break. Take a full breath in and a slow releasing breath out. And relax the body as you soak up our conversation. I hope that felt good. Okay, now that we're a little bit more relaxed, can we be real? I think our morning routines, well, they've gotten a little out of control. You might not have time in the morning to meditate because you're busy doing other things like trying to get to work or getting the kids off to school. And this is where my app, Pause, Breathe, Reflect, comes in, because I built it for busy people with a whole bunch of shorter practices. So if you don't have 10 minutes in the morning to meditate, cool beans. You're human after all. But I bet you have 5 times throughout the day when you have 2 minutes to practice and let go of stress and bring mindfulness to your everyday moments. So today, download Pause, Breathe, Reflect for free and begin to stress less, sleep better, and join a community of like-hearted humans rippling something worth rippling into the world. All right, let's go back to our conversation and celebrate the Kintsugi within us all. And the thing about your journey is that I think for all of our journeys, we're not necessarily, like from one view, not always consistent. We have some things that, people might scratch their head. You say this one thing, but you've done this thing. You do this, Michael. I get this sometimes. You do this and then you do that. I don't get it. I got a lot of criticism for the milkshakes I would drink when I rode my bike across the country. It was actually very wild feedback. I'm still trying to process that, but that's okay. we can have parts of our lives where we're not consistent. And so this leads us to something that sort of led to us sitting down and, well, taking this walk together, is your journey with breast implants and the removal of them. And since here at Kintsugi, we love scars, I know it's probably created some scars, it's left some scars. So can you bring us into that part of your life? Because it's such a powerful, vulnerable share, because the way society is, there's something alongside of Kintsugi that's called wabi-sabi, which I think you might know of. So wabi-sabi is seeing the beauty, the natural beauty as things mature in age. And we right now in this culture, for the longest time, we've had this notion about how women have to look and they can't age gracefully. There's a certain look that women need to have. And you also see it too in this whole longevity thing, which is a lot of bros trying to live to 150 because I think they're more scared of living than they are of dying or whatever, right? But can you bring us to what compelled you to get breast implants to begin with? And then we can continue the journey and the story from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also had zero forward vision that I would end up living this part of my life out loud. And I also am unapologetic about it because I know that it's intended to turn my pain into passion and purpose. So that woman who was on her healing journey still battled with her weight. I was still at that point eating animal products and dairy. I used to say, I had this infamous saying that I would go to God before I'd give up dairy. So I would repeat that always. I was truly addicted to cheese. It was like a main fuel source for me, knowing since I was young that I'm lactose intolerant. So you put two and two together in terms of what kind of inflammation was creating within me. And I started competing in CrossFit. I got into, I had a very fit body. I was competing at a very high level, a lot of strength. It really gave me an opportunity to remember the athlete inside of me, the one that I had put aside graduating high school, saying no to a scholarship because I was scared about how I was going to pay for college, having my baby. And so all of a sudden I had this recharge of you are an athlete. This lives within you, that competitive nature. And I got a lot more fit. And I also created an injury, a torn labrum in my right hip. And I did everything with physical therapists and abdominal specialists and pelvic floor specialists, all these things looking to heal it naturally. And what it came down to is that a surgeon looked right at me and he goes, I can sew that back together, but it will be like a wet paper towel because my body was moving, in his words, on two planes because I had diastasis, recti diastasis, which is a separation from pregnancy. It was very significant. And he essentially said, you need to get that fixed first before we fix your hip. And he goes, and if you're lucky, you'll never have to fix your hip because you won't feel it because your body will now work together rather than working so independently. So I was like, a medical tummy tuck, count me in. I can get rid of extra skin and stretch marks and I can go back to being the strongest I've ever been. Let's do the damn thing.
Yeah, sign me up for that, right?
Sign me up. Yeah. So I went into the hospital with the surgeon and, for women, they have you disrobe completely and look at your body. And she essentially was in not so many words, you need more than a tummy tuck. You need a mommy makeover. And best part about it is you only have to pay for the implants. You don't have to pay for the anesthesia. It's going to save you thousands of dollars and you're going to look like a whole new woman. You're going to feel like $1 million. And I knew that implants weren't actually I didn't want to I already had wisdom in my mind that was a foreign body going into my body. I didn't really want to put anything in, but I did want my body to look different. She essentially was it needs to happen, which for someone that had been diagnosed with body dysmorphia, you can probably imagine how that landed. It affirmed that I was broken and not enough and that I needed something better. And then I took my husband for the final consultation because I was like, well, what about just a lift? What about not putting anything in? Just while you're there, you can make my boobs not hang after breastfeeding each child because we have 2 kids. Maybe we'll just perk them up a little bit. And she's like, yeah, we can discuss, bring your husband in. Let's have the conversation. So took my husband to the consult and she went through the options again, all the ways and places you can put implants. And then I said, and, I really think we should talk about the lift. And she was like, I mean, you'll have maybe a B cup, probably an A cup. And my husband had a open affinity for boobs. He met me. I had, D-sized boobs in high school, being especially overweight. I had like triple D boobs. Having small boobs wasn't something I ever remembered because I bought my first bra with significant size boobs in the second grade. Like I was prematurely, one of those girls that prematurely developed, had early puberty, all of the things based on what I come to now understand I was eating. And like that scared me. But what really hit me was he just accidentally was like, no, like literally like just visceral reaction. No, like terrifying. And the moment he said it, I have to put boobs in my body. He has a affinity for boobs. I also will share with the audience too that until this last year, my husband has been our 17-year relationship walking through porn addiction. And so I was very comparative with myself. Like, why was I not enough for him? And so between those two things of the visceral reaction and that truth, I felt it was the only way that I would ever be attractive to him. And so I went through with choosing to put breast implants in and made the statement before they ever went in, because unlike most doctor or surgeons, she actually did inform me accurately that breast implants to be, I'm doing air quotes for those listening, healthy, because there's no such thing. But the way to maintain the health of the implant is that they need to be replaced every 8 to 10 years. And so I went into this and said, I'm only giving it 10 years. I'm getting one pair. That's it. They're coming out. That will be the end. So I essentially committed to giving him, in my mind, he didn't ask for this. It was never requested of me by him. But in my mind, I was going to give him 10 years of what he wanted. And so I chose to put silicone breast implants in. And if there was a decision I could, that I could take back, it would be that one, because I woke up knowing that I had made the wrong decision.
10 years of looking perky and trying to compare yourself to porn stars, which is a battle that you're not going to win, because it's not about that, but that's the narrative. It's about the physical aspects of who we see and who we compare ourselves to. And yeah, in that moment, like, I'm a boob guy comes out at the doctor's office, right? So do you know the movie Singles?
I don't.
So Singles was a movie, it starred Bridget Fonda and Eddie Vedder from this like small band called Pearl Jam and a whole bunch of others. It was based in Seattle. And she's trying to get this guy to like her. And so she goes to the plastic surgeon and they have this back and forth, and the plastic surgeon's just like, well, if you're going to do it, just, do something modest. And she's like, they're playing around with the computer. And I'm not sure if this is how it's done, where they amp up the size and then they lower the size. And there's a line from the movie, if you're going to have the operation, that comes from her. And, she goes through this whole battle of whether or not to get implants. And then she ends up not getting them. The doctor talks her out of it. It's Hollywood. It's a movie. It's based in the era of grunge and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and the Seattle grunge scene and the whole thing. And she realizes that she's complete without them, thanks to the plastic surgeon. But I can only begin to appreciate what that narrative was in your head, going like, I need to do this. And you're not alone. There's countless women that are also in that same boat with a significant other who the addiction to porn is one that we don't talk about.
And it's more significant than ever because we have phones attached to the internet in our hand and in our pocket, right? Like it was formerly something that you must have a computer for, and typically a private space. And there was more seclusion. Now you can drive in a car, you can be in the office, you can be on public transportation. Like it's so available. The rate in which it has happened is astronomical. So definitely we don't talk about it enough, and how much it's impacting our children is heartbreaking.
It's impacting our children, impacting relationships. I'm of an age where the first experience with porn was stealing your father's Playboy magazine.
Yeah.
But even in those days, and then, as we got computers, and to your mention of phones, it's everywhere. There is so much shame involved in it, and just, it goes to, and again, another podcast, but just the pain that guys feel, like going there and all that, and just how they see themselves and how they see their partners and how we see each other. It's quite complex and complicated, but certainly not talked about enough because it's another addiction that's driving us apart and changing how we see ourselves and how we see each other and taking some of the romance and connection out of our lives when we need it so desperately now.
Yeah, I mean, to think that someone like Hugh Hefner really started this trajectory with normalizing naked women sitting in magazines in your bathroom and next to your bedstand. And as soon as we started to normalize that, it's been a snowball effect. And again, another podcast, but the thing that most have very little understanding, unless you've walked in the S&On or, you become informed in this addiction, is very few understand its direct correlation to human trafficking. And so it's beyond the scope of brokenness and how it's driving us apart. It's truly hurting and abusing humanity.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. So you get through these 10 years, and just last year, did you fully reach the 10-year mark, or was it before the 10-year mark?
I did.
So can you share more about what that experience was like? And as you start, I just want to say, I know you've shared things online, and it's really beautiful, and the vulnerability going through something like that. I'm talking as a dude, to go against the grain, because that's not what you see when you scroll Instagram. You're seeing one definition of beauty. And when I first saw that, I was like, wow, like she's a badass to do this in public, because it is, as I just mentioned, so against the grain. So can you share more about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, well, the truth is my health started to degrade immediately. I don't know that I put the correlation as quickly to implants as I could have, knowing what I know now. Of course, it was meant to be the journey. Everything from a Hashimoto's diagnosis to I did consistent thermography. So watching the inflammatory response that continued to really take over my body, even though I was becoming more and more committed to what we know to be the healthiest protocols when it comes to eating and movement and thinking and all of those things. And so night sweats and brain fog and chronic pain. I had chronic pain from the moment I woke up out of surgery on my left side. And so I really didn't even understand how much pain I was in until post-explant, because once it was gone, there was a huge awakening. So I would have taken them out immediately if money and time and recovery were no question. That is how certain I was that they were not meant to be in my body. Of course, there was still this walk with my husband's addiction that also kept me feeling like I had to hold on a little bit longer. And I was seeking for him to affirm in a way that felt genuine and really supportive for me to remove them. And, in his own way, I'm not saying he didn't feel that way, but it wasn't what was conveyed to me. And so I just kept pushing. And I just kept getting sicker on paper, sicker in the way that my body felt, more pain. And after another experience with his addiction, I went to a women's circle, and we were called to, it was actually the January, almost exactly to the day prior to my explant. And I was going to support my girlfriend in her launch of a new women's gathering. And we were called to make a promise to ourselves that we would complete within a year. And it was the first time I spoke out in that group of women that I was promising to remove my implants to myself, and that I was going to come back to my natural body. And so I worked with a naturopath. I did all the protocols. I did the mindset work, if you will, that I thought was going to prepare me for this amazing recovery. And you're also looking at someone who I didn't even wear a bikini in my life until 7 years ago. So definitely a modest human being. I'm far from one that's going to have a sexualized image of me out there. It's not the way I move in the world. So I thought I was going to have this great recovery and probably do it pretty privately in terms of visual images, but I was going to share the story for sure. I knew that without question. And so, I amped up, had my beautiful community behind me rallying for me. And I went into explant surgery, and I I was excited. I was, of course, scared too, but I was excited. I had been on, for a decade. I'd been in breast implant illness groups of hundreds of thousands. And I, scoured all the internet for all of the befores and afters. And so I was like, I'm going to have small boobs, but they're going to be cute and they're going to be perky. And I talked myself into, this really great result that I was going to be super satisfied with. And as soon as I took my bandages off, I had significant asymmetry and I had a real significant deformity on my left side. And at that moment, I still thought, and I still believe that it's healing, that I'm going to have far more symmetry as I continue to heal every single day. I am still sitting as we record this podcast in a place where visually I still have significant deformity on my left side and it continues to heal. It's better than it was a month ago, 3 months ago, all of those things. And I realized when I went to post in a Facebook group in a Facebook group that had over 300,000 members, really asking for some input from others who may look like me or maybe had some remedies that could help me. And I was asked to choose another image and to reword my post. So I reworded my post 4 times before they blocked me.
Oh, wow.
Blocked me from posting, not from the group.
Sure.
They didn't kick me out. I just could no longer post in the group. And so I started going through the images and I realized that they didn't let stories like mine come forth. And then I went to other groups and realized that this story of deformity, it was unfavorable because it would scare people, is what I was being told. It scared people from explanting. And we wanted to be here to empower people to explant. And I'm like, well, you can be empowered in the truth. And I think it's really important because surgeons will never show the deformed patients. There's no statistics because they don't track them. And we're not allowed in all of the public spaces and places to share our story openly. And I'm the mother to a 19-year-old daughter. At that time, she was 18 and her friends too, all 17, 18, high school age. And I was recovering and I heard a conversation in her bedroom about, at that point, it was, someone talking about their lips and the things they were going to maybe consider doing. And I made my first post that evening with my picture. It was terrifying. I don't love showing my pictures because of the fact that that's, it's my private body and I will do it indefinitely for the rest of my life because when we know the truth of what can happen, especially, before we make the decision, it can be so preventative in my opinion. And it's what no one will ever tell you. They're not going to tell you that the rate of deformity is actually more significant than not. Yes, some women come out of explant surgery and they love their new titties. Great. I want that for every woman. I pray that for every explantee. And the real truth is that more women than not come out with some form of deformity that makes them feel less attractive. And especially when we think about the fact that we get implants because we weren't in love with our bodies. Nobody puts breast implants in because they love their natural body. We put it in as an enhancement because we don't love what we have. And so when you take that same woman and now she's at a very high risk of deformity and there's zero place to speak about that openly and there's no one talking to you about that preemptively so you can prepare for that. There's a lot that can go into our mind and what I believe to be a mindset. And I also believe when you know those things, you can also manifest in a way that you can manifest more abundantly to have a different outcome than maybe me. So that's when I chose to be super bold. I looked at this room of girls sitting on the bed and at the desk in my daughter's room. And I thought, my daughter hears it directly from me because she's living in my house and she's sitting at my dinner table and I'm her mother. And I'll never have the opportunity to tell her friends this as intimately. And so I went all in on being bold with my story and posted my image and have continued to post other ones. And I'm going to keep people moving along with my journey because there's also a lot of hope for healing. There's a lot of hope for coming back to yourself, loving your body as it is, as I continue to move in this journey.
You need truth to be fully empowered. And you're sharing your truth. It's a story worth sharing because so many people, binary people, men, women, everyone needs to hear it. It's just not a person with boobs issue. It's about how we're looking at each other and appreciating the beauty that we have in each other in the way Mother Earth, the universe, or God created us. Like all the wrinkles, all the blemishes, all the gray hairs, pimples, scars, like all that tells this wonderful story. It's, to get to a point where we can fully embrace that in all of us. And I say all that. And I will also say, guilty as anyone about, well, how do I look? Versus like how someone else looks that seems to be more popular. I've been there. We've all gone there, but we can come back home. We can come back to our center that we are damn freaking beautiful without a whole bunch of interventions. And I think, your story, I know your story, Lindsaya, is so worth sharing. Since you've started sharing, what's the response been? Because I, again, can only begin to imagine putting that first post out there. Like most of us, 90% of us, if there's anything somewhat controversial about a position, about anything, forget our bodies or forget about what's going on in our noggin upstairs, but just about whatever. We get terrified of posting that because we don't want to upset anyone, because we want to be liked and we want to be all that. So what was the response like, and where are you today looking back to that very first post, if you could do a compare and contrast?
Yeah. Response was, there have been so many people who have so kindly held me, supported for me, cheerleaded for me, thanked me, congratulated me, appreciated me. Like the abundance in that I really would never have expected is profound. Like it is the greatest blessing because I've been lifted by those that have chosen, like you, to see the beauty in the truth telling, to appreciate it and honor it, pay it forward. I also have received over 1,000 boob pics, thousands now. So I never thought I'd see so many titties in my life.
Yeah, you know a lot about boobs now.
I know a lot about boobs. I know a lot of people's boobs. I always joked I never thought my DMs and my texting would be so littered with other women's breasts. And I say littered only to describe how many. It feels far from littering for me. I feel very honored to hold space for other women as they're walking through this experience. It's also moved beyond the scope of only implants and explants. I have had a lot of people that are going in for mastectomies or have gone through mastectomies, have put spacers in. Like it's expanded into really anyone who has or is considering breast surgery, which again, I feel a huge honor in. I was diagnosed with cancer on the same breast of deformity 6 months after explanting. And many people don't know that breast implants are clinically proven to cause breast cancer. So something I haven't yet met someone who has a surgeon who told them that prior to implanting. So, again, that's opened up the door to those that are having, I know you spoke about it earlier, those that are considering prophylactic mastectomies, those that have moved into that measure and then going through putting spacers in, which make way for the implants and all of these things. I've become really informed thanks to really generous surgeons who no longer put implants in that have taught me a lot around our anatomy. What happens in implanting, what happens in mastectomies, what happens in mastopexy, which is the lifting. So become very informed around what this means for our physical structure. Someone who was a CrossFit coach and an Olympic lifting coach, like anatomy has always been very fascinating to me. And I've done a lot of personal work as a fitness, enthusiast and coach to learning about it too. So it's like this layered effect. I realize God's been preparing me for a long time to be able to have these conversations. And so I think the thing that has been the most remarkable, my speaking mentor, I went through a signature talk training, and there you get to share a bit of your story, a little segment of your talk. And there and in the online space, you're a testament to this too. What has been the most surprising for me is how many men have stood in honor of what I'm doing and believe that I should be in front of more women. And I think that I was so warped because of my own, nuclear family and our journey and what was happening in my marriage. And also, the men even before, formerly dating. I think I was so warped in believing that this is what men wanted. And I've been met by so many men, the DMs and at the signature talk, every man there came up and thanked me and like really wants to like put me in front of their audience and to share the story. And so that has probably been the most profound blessing, is that I realized that we are not adversaries, male to women. Like, we have to convince you guys that we shouldn't change our bodies. What I have come to realize is that our male counterparts are our allies, that they believe as wholeheartedly as we do that we are worthy as we're born, and that all of these adjustments and alterations we're making really don't derive from them. They've derived from us and our thinking. So that's been the greatest gift, to really feel on the journey and held and supported and really lifted by so many men in the world. And Lindsaya 1 year ago to Lindsaya right now, 1 year ago when I took those bandages off, I had zero hope. You know, I run a daily self-love space, which again, I know was a gift God gave me to prepare me for what would carry me in my dark moments. And so because of that practice, I've been able to continue coming back in community and being reminded. And this last year has been one of the most challenging years in terms of getting back to loving myself. And so 1 year ago, you know, I hated myself. I hated that I had ever put these things in, that I had ever been so persuaded by outside influence or by ideas that came up in my own head about how this would fix anything. And I was in a space of devastation. And 1 year later, I know that although unfavorable, although I still have moments where I cry and that I ask why, and I want to be healed faster, and I want to look different, and I want to feel different, although those moments still come in, I'm human, so human. I live in a place of such deep empowerment because I am more than my body, and my body is a gift that keeps me going. And so for so long, I've abused my body. I've treated it like something that had let me down rather than realizing it has always carried me. It has always forgiven me. It has always kept me safe. It has always provided me security. And so a year later, you know, I would say that my love for my physical body, and I mean that beyond the scope of my skin or deformed breasts, like my body, the soul that's contained within this, you know, this meat suit, if you will. It is so much admiration for what she has done for me and how she continues to work with me and keep me safe, even when I do to try to ruin it all. Where, you know, I throw a wedge in the whole game and then wonder why it's not going my way. So 1 year later, I said it at the beginning, and I know that this pain was bestowed upon me to give me great purpose in helping humanity. I know I'm meant to be a voice of humans around the world choosing to alter themselves less. I mean, the startling statistic of 2023 was that 40% of cosmetic surgeries were done on Gen Z. We're talking about 90s babies. We're talking about
my babies they're adult women.
Yeah, mine too.
You know, and yeah, they're so, as a generation, maybe more socially involved than boomers or Gen Xers or millennials. But to hear that, is the word that comes to mind is sad.
Heartbreaking.
It's just, yeah, it's crushing, because we don't need to go there, but we continue through the images that we see, the media we consume, that's how you get popular.
How you become worthy, how you finally become worthy.
And this was not a popular stance with many people that I come in contact with last year when Barbie was such a big hit. And I get the nostalgia of that movie. I do get it. We were a family that didn't allow Barbie in our house because she helped accelerate this image of what a female body was supposed to look like, the ideal, run by a company of a bunch of guys. And there really was no reconciliation with that. I felt strongly enough in the movie that's like, we got here because of Barbie. And yeah, she could be any profession she wanted to be, as long as she looked really hot and she was in heels and she had big tits. So that was it. And so maybe it's not right for me to say as a guy, but if that's your world and that's your imagination as a young girl, then you think, well, okay, well, that's the ideal that I need to step into. And now we're hating on ourselves. And we know now through the data from Instagram what it's doing to teenage girls. We have more information. We can take a step towards just seeing our body, the body, in whatever form that it's in. It's the form. It's not a perfect form or deformed. It's the form. And we can appreciate the form that it's in right now because it will change. And I have hope for you that your body will continue to heal, even going through what I went through, which is completely different than what you are currently going through. I find that my body is still healing. There are things I can do today that I couldn't do 10 years ago, and I'm 22 years out. If you keep nurturing your body as you will, and some days we don't nurture it all that well, we're human. I think our body wants to continue to heal. I think we as people want to continue to heal, but there's a lot of systematic obstacles that get in the way of our healing, our ability to come together. So again, Lindsay, so courageous in sharing your story. What I hear just about your journey, and I love the fact that we got to do this, is that when things come into your life, a new baby, this moment with your implants, other things that have happened maybe for you versus to you, you've done something with it. You've used all those qualities that you mentioned up front and a little, competitive chip on your shoulder. Like we're going to make this happen. So I want to end here, coming up to the end of our walk, with two questions. So the thing that brings the Kintsugi pottery together, because Kintsugi, as you know, we'll take a piece of pottery, which is beautiful, and then it breaks. And then it's put back together, and it's beautiful, but in a different form. A lot of folks will say, and I've said this in the past, that it's beautiful, broken, and now more beautiful. And that just gets into comparison. The original piece of pottery was beautiful. It breaks. It comes back together. It's a different form of beauty with scars that are beautiful symbols of our strength and resilience. But what binds us together, what binds those pieces together, is something called yurishi. So as we round out, what is your yurishi today? What are those things that you do today that help you stay connected to who you truly are, if that makes sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense. And I've had such an amazing time walking with you, Michael. So thank you so much for inviting me on this beautiful walk while we unpack something that I know will continue to make a great impact as we come back to ourselves. So one of the things is breath. I say it all the time, and I know many others too. I mean, listen, it's pause, breathe, reflect is what you do, right?
Amen. Like, breathe, baby, breathe.
Yeah. And so to know me is to know that breath, again, from a former asthmatic, from respiratory specialist to advanced training in breath work for athleticism, breath is our first gift when we come earthside, and it is our last gift going out. It is the foundation of all. And so to come back to me, to get back into this centered space is 100%. I'll use pause, breathe deeply, slowly. That is what centers me. There are so many forms of breath work to do. And when I'm looking to really come back into my body, it is to breathe slowly through my nose, lengthen that breath, come back to my body. So breath is foundational. It's before everything. It's the thing we can go the shortest distance, shortest amount of time without before we cease to exist too. And the other one is, have that daily practice of self-love, to carve out the time where it has been so normalized to pour outwardly, to have gratitude for everything around us, our family, our jobs, our professions. So easy to be proud of our kids and our partners and our team members. So easy to say, I love you to everybody. And so it really is that daily self-love practice is what I call it. It can be moment to moment. It can be, in any minute, coming back. And for me, saying them audibly, writing them down, speaking them in community, whatever it may be, it is so important that I carve out time. It is a priority for me that I speak and say and think those things for me that I would hope others would say or speak or think of me, and that I lead the way in that. And so for me, when I breathe, come back to my body, and I really come into why I'm proud of the human being that I am, why I'm grateful for this body or this mind or this being or this soul. When I speak my desires and my dreams unapologetically, I give 0 Fs if anybody else believes me or thinks it's crazy. And when I lovingly share what it is that I love about me, those things bring me back to my body, my soul's essence, my God-given nature. And it's what pours that gold in between the scars and creates the beauty.
I love that. That's the reflect piece. When I share pause, breathe, reflect, sometimes people stop short. They're like, okay, pause, breathe, meditation. Okay, I did my whatever meditation on whatever other app. And when I go on, I say, no. You're not done yet. We're not done yet. The reflect piece is the most essential piece. It is the self-love piece. It is the gratitude piece. It's the intentional piece. Most meditation out there, it's the meditation's done. Okay, all right, what's next? Next to-do list, check the box. I got my badge. The reflect piece, and to your point, the self-love piece, that's what completes the circle. So you mentioned God. I'm not sure if you know the show Inside the Actor Studio. It was a show that was on one of the cable networks back in the day. It was broadcast from, I think, the Fashion Institute of New York. It was an audience of actors, student actors, and James Lipton was the host. And he would invite famous actors like a Robin Williams, who has one of the most hilarious bits that you can YouTube, but famous actors and actresses of the time. And he would ask them a whole bunch of questions, breaking down their craft so the students can learn from the best. And so he did rapid fire before there was such a thing known as rapid fire. And we're not going to do rapid fire, but there's a question that he would ask that I'd like to ask as well. And I've been asking this throughout my corporate life and now here. So you already mentioned God, as I just mentioned. So you get to the end, you get to heaven, and assuming God exists, you get to meet God. What would you hope God says to you when you meet God?
I love you. Well done.
Well done with this podcast and this conversation. That was awesome. Thanks for walking with me.
That was a beautiful walk.
We got our steps in.
You got our steps in, boo.
We had a nice long walk. We got at least 8,000 steps in. Guarantee. We had good movement. Now we can crank up the tune. So I just want to thank you again for what you're doing, Lindsaya, what you're putting into the world, the energy you're putting into the world, the ripple that you're creating in so many different ways. I know you're making a difference, but on those days where you have some doubt, because we all have those days, just remember that you're making a difference and the world needs your ripple. So thank you for being you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Love you so much.
Love you too. Hey there, it's Michael. Don't you just love Lindsaya? I love her energy, her tenacity, her drive, the fact that she is going to speak her truth. And there's nothing going to stop her from living the life that she wants to live, not only for herself, but her whole family, and really embody her wellness warrior spirit and attitude. She is a person, no doubt, that's making a difference and putting a good ripple into the world. Although, I don't think I'm ready for some of her cold plunging. You can check that out on her Instagram page. And I'll put in the show notes all the different ways that you can connect with Lindsaya. And many of you know we like to do a short meditation after we hear our story of connection for the week. So when you're ready, settle into a comfortable position. If you're out and about, keep your eyes open, please. For everyone else, you can close them because you're always at choice. But come into that posture that feels dignified, that helps you feel grounded. And we'll drop in. And we'll begin with a few healthy inhales and slow releasing exhales. Allow yourself to come into this moment If it feels right, you can invite the body to relax. Maybe soften the shoulders. Relax the forehead. And when it feels natural, settle into the normal rhythm of the breath. And in this moment, reflect on what Lindsaya shared with you. What resonated the most? What can you take from our conversation and weave it into your day? Or perhaps weave it into your life. What bubbled up for you as you heard her story? All right, nice job. You can open your eyes if you've had them closed and take a moment to wiggle those beautiful fingers and toes. And you can also give your body a little stretch. Again, I hope you enjoyed this week's Story of Connection with Lindsaya. And you can find all the ways to connect with her in the show notes. And Lindsaya, thanks for coming on the Kintsugi Podcast. You embody our Kintsugi spirit. And the world needs your energy, so keep rippling something worth rippling.